Hello and welcome back to the channel once again. This is another replay analysis video for you to try and explain how the decision making that's done by both the player in question that we're watching as well as their teammates and occasionally the mistakes of their enemies put together either a spectacular result or a crushing defeat sometimes. This time we are watching Beetlejuice 1977 play the AMX-12T, the French Tier 6 light tank on the Karelia map. So we see Beetlejuice is moving up at the start of this game into the bushes in the centre of this Karelia map to try and pick out some people heading towards the flag. They are going to land themselves in a bit of trouble right at the start. Enemy T-50-2 just runs straight up the middle and ends up proxy spotting Beetlejuice, as well as probably catching a few of the friendlies further back. Now it's just going to run around in circles, basically trying to use its speed and manoeuvrability to try and dodge fire, but especially in this swamped area in the centre of the map, the T-50-2 is not as fast as it usually is, and Beetlejuice is able to pick up their first kill of the game. A key part of that engagement that I thought Beetlejuice handled very well was the end of it. They could have easily just driven out and unloaded a full clip into the T-50-2, but I think that would have been the wrong decision. As we'll see later in this replay, a lot of the enemy team are still moving towards their positions or have reached it. So if Beetlejuice was to back out and try and unload all 4 shells, they'd be standing out in the open, essentially in the middle of the map, for 6 to 10 seconds, depending on how long they took to aim. And that's more than enough time for multiple enemy tanks to just chew through their health. So the Beetlejuice's awareness at the start of the game to just come back behind the rock and break contact was definitely the correct decision in that situation. Another very interesting aspect to Beetlejuice's playstyle is notice how before they take shots, they always make sure that a piece of opaque cover is between them. So a fallen tree or a bush, for example. And look how they're making sure that they're driving through the trees when they're moving up. What this means is that they get to maintain a fantastic camo bonus. As I mentioned in previous videos, bushes on average give you a flat 60% camo bonus, and even a tank like the VK601H there, barely 200 meters away, can't see them. So the difference when you shoot, if you're shooting out from a piece of cover that is translucent, so if you're closer than 15 meters to it, the camo bonus if you shoot goes from 60% down to I think 18%. So what Beetlejuice is doing is maintaining the fantastic camouflage rating and allowing themselves to shoot only when they can afford to. I wanted to draw attention to Beetlejuice's decision here because I think there's a little bit to learn. Notice that they're aiming at the Gonzalo, a tier 8 heavy tank. The team is up 4 kills to 1, but a Gonzalo in this matchup is very likely to be able to turn that around or at least make the game closer than it is. So it's very much a priority target. And you can see by the penetration indicator that it's more than likely that if Beetlejuice fires at this Gonzalo, it's going to hit it, and if the shot is accurate enough, probably takes the tracks off. So it's a very juicy opportunity for Beetlejuice to take. Also, if Beetlejuice was able to get the tracking shot off with their initial hit, chances are they'll be able to follow up and get the other 2 shots in their clip away into the Gonzalo, because even if the Gonzalo immediately repairs, they've still got to account for the travel time and things like that. So the intricate reload, I think, is quick enough on the AMX-12T to get the 2 shots off. On top of that, there is a fair chance that Beetlejuice will not get spotted by this Gonzalo. Now, we know that the bush that's just poking up there between the 2 tanks is not affecting the spotting calculations because Beetlejuice was able to see the Gonzalo from their position all the way through that bush, so that's not part of it. But remember that Beetlejuice has stayed within a bush to do this spotting, so they do have a significant camouflage bonus, and it might be enough to prevent them from being spotted by the Gonzalo. But you'll see now, despite all these positives of taking the shot, that Beetlejuice will not indeed shoot at this Gonzalo, and I think this is the correct decision, and I'm going to try and lay out why. Firstly, the Gonzalo may not be able to see Beetlejuice, but somebody else on the enemy team can. They don't know where all the remaining enemy tanks are because not all have been spotted, and some of them have only been spotted a while ago, so they could have very easily moved into a position where they could see Beetlejuice if they fired. Especially that AMX M445, I don't believe has moved very far, and there you go, they just get lit up not 200 meters away. So if they were just hiding on the other side of that rock when Beetlejuice took the shot, it's very likely that they would have picked them up. The second reason why I think the decision was correct is a little bit more difficult to explain because it's not very set in stone. The first reason was simply if Beetlejuice takes the shot, there's a chance they get spotted and then shot in return. But this second reason is more to do with the value, I suppose, of the play. So if we consider the first play of Beetlejuice taking the shot, and let's say they do very well and land all 3 remaining shots of their clip and get some tracking damage from, say, an ally of some kind, the Gonzalo loses about half of its health. But Beetlejuice gets spotted, but gets away unscathed. Beetlejuice has racked up about 450 damage and gets roughly 400-ish spotting or tracking damage on top of that, so the Gonzalo has to cede the position and get unspotted again. So that's quite an impact that's been had. But because Beetlejuice gets spotted, they have to retreat to cover, so they lose the vision on the Gonzalo, maybe the 88 and possibly some other campers. They have to change position. So with that in mind, let's talk about the other play that Beetlejuice took in this game. They elected not to shoot the Gonzalo. So what's the key benefit here? The first is quite clearly the Beetlejuice manages to maintain vision on that position. So as long as they stay there or move forward, which they can do because of their excellent camo rating, the Gonzalo can never use that position again because they will get spotted as soon as they get near it. So now in terms of map control, the benefit is twofold. Firstly, the friendly team has a little bit more breathing room down the centre of the map and in the south because they've got a light tank spotting uncontested, so they have easy shots and probably won't be spotted if they take those shots because Corellia has a lot of bushes and fallen trees, so chances are from long range there's going to be an intruding bush. They will be able to shoot for free while the enemy won't be able to spot them through that. And also the other side of the coin, the enemy team can't use these positions anymore because the light tank is still far forward, so they're getting pushed back and have less options to defend themselves or attack. And then of course, because Beetlejuice has been playing so well hiding in bushes and doing all the spotting from a safe distance, they obviously won't be spotted, so they get to keep all of their health and remain uncontested in the centre. But of course there is also the downside of this play in comparison to the other one. Because Beetlejuice doesn't shoot, they're not going to get any damage of any kind and will not receive any tracking damage. I can't really predict whether they get spotting damage or not. Obviously, you can't predict what other players will do, but let's assume that they don't, so there will be no damage for making this play. Here then you can see the specific advantages and disadvantages of the choice that Beetlejuice and possibly you have had to make in your games. Now, the many aspects of the game might have been different. Your gun may have had less alpha damage, but you had more allies in position to take advantage of your tracking. You may have had less health, or there might have been different positions that you had to take into account. That kind of thing. There could have been all sorts of variables in play. But the reason I've put this together is to try and explain and break down what the value of each play will bring to the game. And if you can sort of decipher in your games what play is more valuable to you and your team, on average, you're going to come out with a higher win rate, because this sort of evaluation of how valuable the play is will push your team to victory more, essentially. I'll try and explain it a little bit better with this specific example. What I'm trying to explain on a more simple level, and it will be demonstrated by, in part here, what has about to happen to this AMX M445 as it is destroyed. So let's just dive in a little bit more to the specific situation that AMX demonstrated. The AMX essentially demonstrated the other option, taking the shot. I think they were trying to shoot the WZ-131, and in doing so revealed themselves, because when you shoot, the camouflage bonuses of the bushes around you are dramatically reduced, and so they were close enough to Beetlejuice's AMX to be spotted, essentially. And this is the point I'm trying to put across when I talk about the value of a position. Back when Beetlejuice and some allies were aiming at the Gonzalo, there were a couple of clues on the minimap as to alongside the benefits that I was talking about in the table. On top of that, in this specific situation at least, there were some other benefits, and we'll focus on the ones regarding the AMX M445. At the time Beetlejuice and the other guys were aiming at the Gonzalo, they had no way of knowing that the AMX M4 would be spotted again. But on the minimap, the AMX M4 was last spotted not 200, 300 meters away from Beetlejuice's position. So there's a good chance if they slip up, then that, considering the large view range that Beetlejuice appears to have on their tank, they will be spotted. On top of that, if they move, or especially if they shoot, heavy tank's camo rating in general is terrible, so chances are they will be spotted, and it's not particularly a maneuverable tank, so they're probably going to be spotted not too far away from their previously spotted position. So on top of the already numerous benefits of not shooting, in this specific situation, Beetlejuice also has that benefit of, as we see there, over 1,000 spotting damage from spotting the AMX that they could potentially get. Obviously, at the point of aiming at the Gonzalo, they didn't know whether they were going to get it, but if they seeded the position by shooting at the Gonzalo, there's a good chance that they wouldn't have got that spotting. So that's the extra sort of calculations you can make in the game, taking into account the positions of other enemies, aside from the ones you're aiming at or specifically focusing on, how much health they've got left, and sort of the overall benefit that the position gives you. Again, there's no sort of clear-cut guidelines as to when you should take a position, when you should cede a position, run back, take shots, that kind of thing. The game is very different every time you enter the battle, so you have to sort of develop a sense of pattern recognition as to when you can make plays or retreat, disengage, that kind of thing. So how do you develop this sense of spotting opportunities and seeing threats before they happen? Well, the first major tool that you've got is your minimap. It's the most important tool for these kind of predictive plays. If you're in a fast tank, like a light tank that Beetlejuice is in, you need to look at your minimap to spot opportunities for spotting, tracking, or your own damage, or maybe a flanking opportunity. And if you're in a much slower tank like the T95, you really have to pay attention, because if you get caught out in the open trying to make it to a position, chances are you're going to get destroyed and tracked multiple times because you're not quick enough to find cover in a pinch. To try and explain it in a different way, if you think about looking at your minimap more often, so for example, imagine that all of the tanks are spotted every time you look at the minimap, including your own. So every time you look, you'll see where you're driving, obviously, and then you switch your eyes over to the minimap and you see your little tank symbol on that, in the position you're in. The more often you do that in different positions, you'll see, oh, this bush is here, oh, this position that I really like is here exactly, and then you can do the calculations to see where your view range reaches, how much camo you've got, and even to sort of calculate where, oh, if an enemy tank is here, I'm probably getting spotted if I shoot, if you use the position often enough. The point I'm trying to make is, if you think that high-level players, pros, things like that, are looking at sort of the view range characteristic of the enemy tanks and then the camo of their own, and calculating at each point how likely they are to get spotted, or they're looking at the total hit points of the enemy tanks within their view range, things like that, then you're kidding yourself. They're not doing it. They have developed this tool for themselves. They know where the best positions are intrinsically because they've just done it so many times. So you need to develop that skill because it's the most efficient way of knowing and learning the best positions for your tank on any map at any time. The key point here is that it's far more efficient to learn these handful of skills than if I were to try and tell you all the good and bad positions for all the tanks on every map, if I did a sort of map review series or something like that. Take the example I just used to illustrate my point with Beetlejuice shooting the Gonzalo. It took me about 5 to 10 minutes to explain why that one position for that particular tank with that particular setup was good at that point in time because of specific positions of the friendlies and enemies and the player. Now, imagine how many times, even though this game is played millions of times every day, how many times that situation will arise. Next to no chance. Over the entire course of the game's history, that particular situation has probably never arisen far more than a couple of hundred times. So there's no point in trying to learn specific situations over and over again. So you have sort of a handbook of, oh, right, so this tank is 200 meters away from me, this is 300 meters away from me, so the rulebook says I must not shoot, or things like that. There's no way you can learn all of the guidelines. And these players in these videos, I hope you've been able to see as I've been describing, they already have this skill on lock, essentially. They've played this game for long enough that they've known what decisions to make, when to make them, and how to execute them properly. So what I'm trying to do is show you how they're doing it, so you can copy, not what they're doing, of course, even if you were in an AMX-12T, for example, on the Corellia map, bottom tier, and spawned on the same side and did whatever, that I want you to come away with the skill set so you know how to best perform in that game, and not how to perform best in your AMX-12T on Corellia North spawning counter battle. Okay, I think that's about it for the ranting portion of this video. Let's get back into the gameplay before this video drags on for hours and hours. So, we've got Beetlejuice. They've successfully secured the centre of this map and are going to head up and take advantage of it by trying to spot people on the northwestern corner of the map. You can see the enemy has successfully won that fight and is trying to push out. So Beetlejuice is going to see if they're going to go around the southern part of the rock, and they do catch a enemy VK3601H. Now this is obviously a mistake from Beetlejuice here. They elect to sit out and fire off their autoloader and try and get the rest of the damage off, and you can see they take some serious punishment for it, to the point where they have less than 100 health, which means they are now a one-shot for anybody on the enemy team. Also, more bad news for Beetlejuice. They failed to spot whoever was in the base capturing it, so they're going to have to try an alternative option. Now, because they've done fairly well in clearing the southern side of the map, they are able to use the environment to try and get an alternative angle. They do pick out the base camping Gonzalo and 88 from the enemy, so they can't really go around the way they wanted to. I'm going to try and take a shot at this 88. You can see the overlapping pieces of foliage that provide enough cover, so Beetlejuice is confident enough to take the shots for free and are going to enter a reload. The enemy light tank, the T-71 CMCD, is the one capturing it. They have been hit, so the capture counter has been reset, and Beetlejuice is confident enough to come around this side of the rock, and you can see the T-71 is hiding themselves from the enemies, or the Beetlejuice's allies, pushing from that direction, but obviously in doing that has absolutely no way of stopping Beetlejuice from killing them. And see another little tidbit there from Beetlejuice, they know they're going to get spotted firing that shot, so as soon as they do, they are on the move, and you can see the Sixth Sense goes off soon after. So Beetlejuice managed to get themselves into this small dip, covering them from the base campers near the enemy spawn as well as up to the north, and I really like this from Beetlejuice for this specific part. Notice how they're knocking down the trees and the direction the trees are falling down. So because the top of the trees are falling down further away from them, they don't have to drive back as far to take these shots with the opaque foliage in the sniper view, so they get the full camo bonus and don't have to go back as far, so there's no risk to them not having enough gun depression. And they do also catch out the enemy Super Hellcat, who has also been camping the enemy deployment. You saw there for a moment, you could see Beetlejuice was really struggling to aim up there, and that's actually down to the tank. The AMX-12T and all of the auto-loading French tanks have a real problem with gun elevation. They barely have more than 10 degrees each of them, and that can be a real problem, especially on reverse slopes as we saw there. But Beetlejuice managed to make it work and gets definitely one shot in. I think the second one was a blind shot, so we'll see if that one goes in the post-game stats. But the friendlies have now wiped out the northwestern corner of the map as well as the southeast. So Beetlejuice now using their superior view range to catch out this 88. And in regards to my previous point about the T95, this 88 is trying to get behind the rock and is obviously too slow and is outmatched on view range. So you can see how quickly things can turn badly if you make the wrong decision at the wrong time. So now we're coming to the closing stages of this game. The enemy Gonzalo that Beetlejuice didn't shoot earlier, as well as the Super Hellcat, are final enemy tanks, along with an enemy Su-130 PM who is only just been spotted this entire game for the first time. And the amount of health that the Gonzalo is still on is probably a good indicator of how effective that previous decision I was talking about would be, in terms of how much effective fire could be laid down on that Gonzalo if Beetlejuice had shot and tracked them. But nevertheless, Beetlejuice is just going to run up and proximity detect this Su-130 PM, who can't move because if they come out from the bunker, they're just going to get shot by unspotted friendlies. So they can't really do anything here. It looks like this Su-130 PM's got one more shot left in them, possibly two with the health they can trade, and that will be it for them. The enemy Super Hellcat goes down, and the enemy Gonzalo is still unspotted for them at the moment, so it looks like all the friendlies are going to converge on this Su-130. Beetlejuice here is just waiting for an opportunity. They're trying to bait out the Su-130 PM, who is not quick enough to catch their light tank and elects to just fire off one last shot before they die. There it goes. So Beetlejuice would have had plenty of time, but isn't quick enough on the accelerator to get in there and take the last shot. All that's left now is the enemy Gonzalo. Now, I'm not sure what the Gonzalo has been doing off the top of my head and what kind of gun it's packing, but Beetlejuice seems particularly confident as they drive out and just try and plant a shot into the front of it, and it takes a huge hit from behind and is forced to point out at Beetlejuice so they don't get shot in the back again like that. It's all but victory here because the friendly team is capturing the base as well as surrounding this Gonzalo, and Beetlejuice gets a nice 700 spotting damage on the Gonzalo just before he goes down, and the Gonzalo misses its shot and is the last to die, bringing this to a victory for Beetlejuice's team. So that about does it for this video and this replay. Beetlejuice there showing us exactly how to use a light tank in a map with lots of dense cover that they can use to spot enemies without being spotted. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like, and if you are interested in more videos like this and similar content, please consider subscribing. You can listen to me rant as much as you want if that's what you're wanting. So yeah, thank you all for joining me, and I will see you in the next one.